All right, in the classic playoff series, the great playoff series, we are up to 2017. And so we're up to the point where, yeah, the channel's a thing. This is right before Vegas comes in, and Vegas would have an impact on both Pittsburgh and Ottawa. In that Mark Mathot ends up being taken by Vegas before they trade him. And, of course, then all the FNUF talk gets in there, and fans not happy that FNUF didn't waive his no movement clause. And, of course, for Pittsburgh, this would be the final playoffs that has Marc-Andre Fleury as a member of the team. And he came into this series against Ottawa as their starter. Didn't end it as their starter. But this is part of what makes the Pittsburgh run in 2017 really, really impressive to me. It makes it more impressive to me than the 2016 run, to be honest. This was their second of back-to-backs. Round 1, they beat Columbus in 5. Round 2, they beat Washington in 7. And, of course, the Stanley Cup Finals, they would play against Rene, and they'd win it in 6. Now, for the Ottawa Senators, they beat Boston in 6 in the first round, and then they beat the Rangers in 6 in the second round. It was one of those times where Boston loses in the first round, and I'm like, I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it. Did I want Boston to go further? Of course I did, but at least it was Ottawa to beat them. So, 50, 21, and 11 was the overall record for Pittsburgh that year. 282 goals for, which was first. 234 against, which was 17th in the NHL. For Ottawa, 44, 28, and 10. They had a good record. So the Cinderella term, they had home ice against Boston, so it was somewhat of a Cinderella run, but not as shocking as some of the other ones we've seen over the years. 212 goals scored, which was 22nd in the NHL. 214 against, which was 11th. So they're right around middle of the pack for the most part, most of their stats. But going into this series, they weren't given that much of a chance against the defending Stanley Cup champions. And, and Sid the Kid and all that other wonderful stuff. So, it starts in the first game in Pittsburgh with Jean-Gabriel Pageau scoring from Bobby Ryan at 14:32. And Bobby Ryan had a very good series here. May arguably have been the best forward for the Ottawa Senators in this round. Second period, no scoring. Third period would be Evgeny Malkin that ties things up from Kunitz and Hainsey at 14:25. So we go to overtime. Wouldn't be the only time we'd see overtime in this series, but it would be the last time we would see overtime until Game 7. So Game 1, the overtime ends with Bobby Ryan scoring from Pageau and Stone at 4:59. This will be a series that features a lot of names that are no longer with the Ottawa Senators. Just throwing that out there. And some for Pittsburgh as well. Craig Anderson, 27 saves on 28 shots in the victory. He was fantastic throughout this series, really was. And Marc-Andre Fleury, 33 saves on 35 shots at the other end of the ring. Pretty good. So we go to Game 2. Game 2, there's no scoring in the first period, and there's no scoring in the second. So low-scoring game. And then third period, it's Phil Kessel breaking through from Malkin and Mata at 13:05. That's the only goal in the game. Anderson saves 28 out of 29. Fleury saves all 23 shots he faced, and he gets a shutout. So, pretty good start to the this series for Marc-Andre Fleury. And then, Game 3 takes place. Game 3 is not as pretty of a game for Marc-Andre Fleury. So, Game 3 sees the Ottawa Senators get the hero's welcome, and rightfully so, I might add, for getting a split in Pittsburgh. And they reward the fans with a pretty good first period. First, it's Hoffman from Turris and Burrows at 48 seconds. Then it's Mathot from Ryan and Broussard at 10 minutes and 34 seconds. Followed by Broussard from MacArthur and Ryan at 12:28. And then 24 seconds later, Smith scores from Mathot and Carlson at 12:52. And Marc-Andre Fleury's night's coming to an end. So second period, no scoring until 18 minutes and 18 seconds in the second period when Turris scores from Hoffman and Clayson to make it 5-0. And in the third, because you're not allowed to get a shutout against Pittsburgh, Crosby gets a power play marker from Kessel and Streit at 6:07. And that makes it a 5-1 game for the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa doesn't care they lost the shutout. Not a big deal. They win. Marc-Andre Fleury, 5 saves on 9 shots. Matt Murray, 19 saves on 20 shots coming in relief. Fleury wouldn't see the net again during the series. And Anderson, 25 saves on 26 shots. And it definitely, the momentum of this series will shift after Game 3. Game 3 is the big one for Ottawa, and then Game 4 hits. Game 4, Mata scores late in the first period from Crosby and Gensel at 19:14 of the first to make it 1-0 Pittsburgh. Take control on the road. Second period, It's another power play marker for Crosby from Gensel and Kessel at 7:41. And then Dumoulin gets on the board from Cole and Wilson at 11 minutes and 30 seconds. So it's 3-0. Ottawa's going to fight back, starting with MacArthur scoring from Ryan at 18:22, and in the third, Tom Pyatt scores from Hoffman and Carlson at 14:59, makes it 3-2. Despite all the excitement and all of the maybe they're going to come back and do it, maybe they can go up 3-1, Pittsburgh holds on, they win that game 3-2. Murray saves 24 out of 26 in the victory. Anderson saves 32 out of 35 in the loss. So we go to game 5 in Pittsburgh. And again, for Ottawa, this is the game. This is where you can have a great impact on your ability to close out, have control of the series. Pittsburgh, being the defending Stanley Cup champions and being able to come up big in big games as well. Pittsburgh seems to have this one under control, and it's going to be Anderson that gets chased out of this one. First period, Mata scores from Rust at 8 minutes and 14 seconds. We then see a power play marker again. Crosby with a power play goal for the third game in a row. Daly and Malkin with the assists at 12:03. Rust then scores from Bonino and Rowney at 16:04, followed by Scott Wilson getting a goal from Rowney and Bonino at 18:17. Second period, after Anderson's been chased, Cullen scores from Streit and Rowney at 1 minute and 54 seconds. So Rowney with 3 helpers in that game. Third period, they keep piling it on. First, it's a power play marker from Kessel. Crosby and Malkin with the assists at 50 seconds. And then a power play goal. It's Daly that scores that power play goal from Kessel and Malkin at 8 minutes and 49 seconds. That's right. The final score of that one was 7-0. So Anderson saves 10 out of 14. Mike Condon goes in and into the net, saves 19 out of 22. Matt Murray, 25 saves for the shutout. Pittsburgh records their second shutout of the series, and each one's been by a different goaltender. So Pittsburgh in control going to Ottawa. Ottawa knows they have to take some of the flow out of the game and make it so that it's their game. And they did that. First period, there was no scoring. Second period, now early in the second period, Pittsburgh makes Ottawa fans' hearts skip a beat just a bit when he scores from Cole and Wilson at 4:51. They hold that lead until Ottawa gets a power play, and it's Bobby Ryan that scores on the power play from Turris and Carlson at 13:15. And so it's 1-1 entering the third period. Early in the third period, it is Hoffman with the goal from Clayson and MacArthur at 1:34. So the Ottawa Senators getting points from MacArthur, who was an inspirational name at the time, and Ottawa comes out of this with the victory. So there's a lot of storybook moments in this series. This game really was a storybook game for Ottawa, and it gave fans a lot of hope. Matt Murray saves 28 out of 30. Craig Anderson stands on his head in that game. He saves 45 out of 46 for the Ottawa Senators. Quite the bounce back from a Game 5 where his numbers weren't necessarily great. And so Anderson plays pretty darn well, and he gets the victory, and we're going to a Game 7. Now in Game 7, this is where hearts and minds of Ottawa fans get broken. So I apologize, but it's still a great series, right? First period, no scoring. Second period, Kunitz scores from Sherry and Cullen at 9:55. That lead lasts 20 whole seconds before Stone scores. Carlson and Pajot with the assists at 10:15. Those are 3 names combining together on a goal there that it's noticeable when you see Stone from Carlson and Pajot and go, oh, they're all gone now. There is some sadness for me as a Sens fan seeing that. Now, third period, power play marker by Schultz from Kessel and Kunitz at 11:44 restores that lead for Pittsburgh. Ottawa never had a lead in this game. Dzingel would score to tie it, however, from Carlson and Turris at 14:41. And again, there's a combination of 3 names, all gone. It's just Ottawa, most of them were gone within about a year and a half after that, right? So we go to overtime. In the first overtime, there's no scoring. Again, pretty excellent overtime overall. So we go to a second overtime. Chris Kunitz breaks the hearts of Ottawa fans everywhere with a goal from Crosby and Schultz at 5 minutes and 9 seconds of the second overtime. Pittsburgh moves on to the Stanley Cup Finals, where they would beat Nashville, probably saving the NHL's ratings in the States. I mean, if it was Ottawa and Nashville, right? Ottawa and Nashville, however, would have been a big draw north of the border, but south of the border, probably not as much. Anderson, 39 saves on 42 shots. He played great in that game. Murray saves 27 out of 29. Big game goaltender, that Matt Murray. And, yeah, that ended it. Now, this series may have been harmful in the short, I guess, and long term to Ottawa, that it left Ottawa looking like a team that was on the verge of being a Stanley Cup champion. And then when they struggled out of the gate the following season, and of course, they acquired Matt Duchene in a deal that they lost. There's no way to look at it other than a loss. It's one of those things where you think if these guys if Ottawa had gone out in the first round that year against Boston, would we maybe have seen a completely different scenario for the Ottawa Senators going into that following season? Would they have had a lot less expectation? Would Eugene Melnyk not have necessarily been so quick to get rid of everybody, or would that have just happened anyways? So a lot of what ifs, and it was a tough series because they were an overtime goal away from going to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they didn't get there. Bobby Ryan was the leading scorer for Ottawa, 2 goals, 4 assists. Carlson had 5 assists in that series. Hoffman, 2 goals, 2 assists. Turris, a goal and 3 assists. Anderson was 3 and 4 with a .936 save percentage. So when you remember he saves 10 out of 14 here, that .936 was lower than it otherwise would have been if he'd had a really solid game there. Crosby, 3 goals, 3 assists to lead the Penguins. Kessel had 2 goals, 4 assists. Malkin, 2 goals, 4 assists. Kunis with 2 goals and 2 helpers. Matt Murray was 3 and 1 in this series with a .946 save percentage. Fleury was 1 and 2 with the .910 save percentage. And of course, both goalies recorded a shutout in this series, both Fleury and Murray. So there you go. The Pittsburgh Penguins survived a scare against the Ottawa Senators. And for Ottawa fans, this is that series that they'll look back on for ages and think what might have been and what could have been and what maybe should have been. But the reality is 9 times out of 10, in a situation like this, the team that ends up coming out victorious is probably the right team. Pittsburgh, probably the right team to win it. Play the villain again. But it was a fun series. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.